This is Justine Spargo recording Chapter 3, Ethical and Legal Issues for Learning Plan 5 in Nursing Health Promotions. All right, so our objectives today are to differentiate among ethics, morals, and values and rights, define ethical dilemma, discuss the ethical principles of autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance, justice, and veracity, differentiate between malpractice and negligence, and identify behaviors relevant to the psychiatric mental health setting for which specific malpractice actions should be taken. All right, so nurses will frequently face complex situations in their work and were held to the high level of accountability. It's important to understand certain ethical and legal concepts to help with the challenges of making difficult decisions regarding life and death, because that is something that we deal with all the time. Legislation determines what is right or good within a society, so it's important for a nurse to understand the law and the rights of patients that are under their care. So nursing competency and accountability are compromised when the nurse isn't knowledgeable about any of these matters. An ethical dilemma is a situation that requires an individual to make a choice between two equally unfavorable options. In this situation, there is evidence to support both moral right and wrongness related to each choice. This does not mean that all ethical issues are dilemmas. A dilemma only arises when there is no clear reason to choose one option over the other, and that there are desirable and undesirable outcomes to both. So the steps that may be used in making ethical decisions are noted below. So just note that they are really close to the nursing process. So the first step is assessment. So we gather subjective and objective data about a situation, and then we consider personal values as well as values of others involved in the ethical dilemma. Then step 2 is the problem identification. We identify the conflict between two or more alternative actions. And then next is planning. We explore the benefits and consequences of each alternative. Then we consider principles of ethical theories. And then we select an alternative. And then we implement. So we act on the decision made and communicate the decision to others. And then we evaluate. So we evaluate those outcomes. Were they good outcomes or bad outcomes? Or what do we need to change? All right, so laws and regulations regarding the concepts of confidentiality and the right to privacy. So the 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution protect an individual's privacy. So most states have statutes protecting confidentiality of records. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act protects client confidentiality on the federal level and gives individuals the right to access their medical records, to have corrections made to the medical records, and to decide with whom their medical information may be shared. So, on top of federal laws, most states have statutes that pertain to the doctrine of privileged communication, which grants certain professionals privileges under which they may refuse to reveal information about and communicate with clients. So, in most states, this basically applies to psychiatrists and attorneys, but in some instances, psychologists, clergy, and nurses are also included. So, a major exception to these laws is the duty to warn, which was established by the court case in 1974, that it ruled that mental health profession has a duty not only to their client, but also to individuals who are being threatened by the client. So most states now recognize that therapists have legal obligations to prevent their clients from harming themselves or others. Another exception to these laws is in the case of the suspected child or elder abuse. Every state requires that healthcare professionals report suspicion of child abuse to legal authorities, and many have similar statutes regarding elder abuse. So informed consent is when there's a preservation and protection of an individual's right to decide whether to accept or reject a treatment. There are instances when treatment may be performed without obtaining informed consent, but in most cases, nurses must ensure that there are 3 major elements of informed consent have been addressed. So the knowledge. So the client has received adequate information on which to base his or her decision, usually from the physician, not necessarily the nurse, or maybe it's the nurse anesthetist, whoever's going to be going through with things. Then competency is the other one. The individual's cognition is not impaired to an extent that would interfere with decision making, or if so, that the individual has a legal representative. So that would be like having someone set up to make decisions for you if you had dementia. And then 3 was free will. So the individual has given consent voluntarily without pressure or coercion from others. The Joint Commission has established specific standards regarding the use of seclusion and restraint. So some examples of current standards include seclusion or restraint is discontinued at the earliest possible time. So we take it off as soon as we can. Unless state law is more restrictive, orders for restraint or seclusion must be renewed every 4 hours for adults ages 18 and older, and every 2 hours for children and adolescents ages 9 to 17, and every hour for children younger than 9 years of age. And then an in-person evaluation must be conducted every within 1 hour of initiating restraint or seclusion. Patients who are simultaneously restrained and secluded must be continuously monitored by trained staff, either in person or through audio or video equipment. Staff who are involved in restraining and secluding patients are trained to monitor the physical and psychological well-being of their patients. And then finally, we have false imprisonment, which is a deliberate and unauthorized confinement of a person within fixed limits by the use of verbal or physical means. Healthcare workers may be charged with false imprisonment or restraining or secluding against the wishes of the client, with anyone having been admitted to the hospital voluntarily. Nursing liability. So, negligence is defined as the failure to exercise the standard of care that a reasonable, prudent person would have exercised in a similar situation. Any conduct that falls below the legal standard established to protect others against unreasonable risk of harm, except for conduct that is intentionally, wantonly, or willfully disregarded of others' rights. So there's a Black Law Dictionary, which defines malpractice as an instance of negligence or incompetence on the part of a professional. To succeed in malpractice claim, a plaintiff must also prove proximate cause and damages. All right, types of laws. So some of the types of lawsuits that commonly occur in psychiatric nursing. So a nurse may be charged with breach of confidentiality for revealing aspects about a client's case or even for revealing that an individual has been hospitalized, if that person can show that making this information known resulted in harm. A nurse may be liable for defamation of character if they share false or malicious information that is detrimental to the client's reputation. When this information is in writing, it is referred to as libel. When it's spoken, it's called slander. Invasion of privacy charges can stem from searching a client without probable cause. Assault is an act that results in a genuine fear that he or she will be touched without consent. Battery is unconsented touching of another person, and harm or injury does not have to occur for these charges to actually be legitimate. And a nurse can be charged with false imprisonment or for holding a client against his or her wishes outside of an emergency situation. So how a nurse can protect himself or herself against liability. So Hall and Hall, 2001, suggested the following proactive nursing actions in an effort to avoid nursing malpractice. So respond to your patients, educate your patients, comply with the standard of care, supervise care, adhere to the nursing process, document carefully, and follow up by evaluating the care that was actually given. And that's it for this PowerPoint slide.